Well, Pastor Craig, this past Sunday, we are in our abnormal series, and our topic for the day was money.
Yep.
So you did a great job in answering a lot of questions, but there have been questions that have come up since then that we wanted to take just a quick second and try to give some clarity on.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So can you answer some things for us today?
Yes, that'd be
All
wonderful.
right. So one question that was asked is tithing for the New Testament church?
Sure, yeah, great question. And here with this kind of a further thoughts video, we wanted to just be able to take a couple of minutes and answer these quickly for you so that you can get some tools in your hands. And this is a great question. It came up, and I know we talked about this, and I referenced Matthew 23:23. And I just want to reiterate that verse speaks to us about tithing in the New Testament, because Jesus was speaking to the Pharisees, and he said to them that you're tithing on all of these things, and specifically about the herbs that they actually had and were getting out of their gardens. And he said, you should actually be doing this, but what you should have added to it is grace and mercy as well. And so what Jesus was doing is what he always did in his teaching. He was affirming what the practice of the law was saying. Hey, yes, we tithe, but you should have also added grace and mercy to what you're doing. So what Jesus is doing is he's affirming tithing, and he's also building on that and telling us how to make it even better, so that we don't just give, but we give generously and purposely out of mercy and grace as well, that we want to be generous with our lives. So what he's doing in this verse is he's affirming the practice of tithing, and he's bringing it forward in the New Testament to say, here's what we've done, and here's how you can do it now under the law of grace. He's showing us a more perfect way as we would give to the Lord's mission.
All right, and also the attitude of the heart of giving. That's what he's
Yes,
speaking to.
attitude
That
of the
grace
heart.
and mercy
Yeah,
is a
great
big
point.
component for a believer, a follower of Christ,
Yes.
in all that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Great point.
another question is, how do we expect to see the return or the blessing from tithing in our life?
Yeah, that's another great question. How do we see the return? And this is one of those questions that it's not always easy to give you a formula answer, because there really isn't a formula answer where, if I give this much money, will God give me this much money back, that kind of a thing. But what we recognize throughout Scripture, and even within the Malachi 3, chapter 3, verse 10 and 11, what God was talking about was he says, I will give you back. There'll be abundance, so there will come finances. But he also said, I will protect what you have. It's not going to wear out as quickly as it did, as it would if you weren't tithing. I'm going to protect what you have. I'm going to make sure that calamity doesn't come on you. And there's a protection that God actually puts on our things. They last longer. And I know for some who haven't practiced this in their life, they say, oh, come on, are you serious? And I absolutely am serious. It's what we see throughout Scripture, how God will bless. He takes what we have, he makes it last longer. It stays quality. And so there's this return that we have in that way, so we don't have to go out and buy that again and spend that again. Our food lasts longer. There's just cars last longer. There's a lot of ways that it comes back to us. I have in my own life. I remember one day I was actually upset about giving to the Lord, and this was years ago. And I actually said out loud as I was walking away from the mailbox one day, God, I'm looking at all these bills and I'm saying, Lord, here I tithe every month, and I have a fixed income, and I'm never, how are you going to bless me? How are you going to do that? I remember saying that. I actually said it out loud as I'm walking back to my house. I went to the mailbox the very next day, and there was a check in the mail completely out of the blue. I had no idea that it was coming, and as soon as I opened it up, God just whispered in my heart, I'm in control. I'm in control. Am I telling you that if you tithe, that's going to happen in your life every month? No, absolutely not. It happened to me once. But I'll tell you what, it was God answering me. God will bless in any way he chooses. But know this, God will bless. He will give you favor when it comes to your finances and the things that you have.
That's great. Another question was regarding God's favor. How does that work with tithing?
Yeah, that's another good question. Some people wondered when we were talking about favor, what exactly is that? And we're not talking about favor, meaning that if you tithe, you have eternal salvation. Our tithing isn't connected to eternal salvation. They're separate. When we're talking about God's favor, we're talking about His favor on our finances, on our things. Our eternal salvation, that is bought through Jesus Christ, faith in Him and Him alone. And I'm not messing with that whatsoever. But when we're talking about our finances and giving those to the Lord and being part of His mission, what we're saying is, if I want God's favor on my life and these things, then I need to be part of His mission. And again, who is God going to bless? The person who is joining Him in His mission? Or is it the person who said, God, you know what? I wonder in my life why I don't have more. I don't want to be part of your mission. I'm not going to do what you've asked me to do with the finances. I'm not going to be a good steward of what you've given me. You know, who of those two people do we think God's going to bless? I kind of think it's going to be the person that's giving towards God's mission and joining Him in this work, because eternity is always on God's mind.
Yes.
And we get to be part of it as we give.
We get to partner up, and that is a blessing in itself, to know that we're part of God's mission.
Up. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
These are great questions.
They are great questions that have come. Another one is dividing the tithe. Should we do this?
Okay, sure. Yeah, the questions come up. Should we, okay, I'm giving 10%, but can I give 10% to this person that I know, or part of my tithe to this person, part of my tithe to this person, and then part of it to the church? And I would just give you the direction that the scriptures would say, where God says to bring that 10% into the storehouse, the place of worship, to be part of this mission that I have. And so with my wife and I, we have always understood that to mean that you bring your 10% to the church. Now, we give more than 10% on a monthly basis in our life, and so we have extra, we have margin built into our budget so that we are doing other things. We support children, Compassion Children. We work with other missions here within our church also. We give above and beyond our tithe to the building fund. We would have money set aside to help people that we see are in need. These are things that allow us to live generously. And I'm not telling you that, we're giving thousands away in this, because we don't have that kind of money to do. But we always want to be in a place where we can give something if God prompts us to do it. And so it allows us to do that when we plan and have some margin. And but when it comes to the tithe itself, we don't mess with that. We always just write that check, give that to the church. We're excited about how the church is working, and that money is going to go to fund all the different things that the church is doing.
Yeah. This isn't an direct answer to the question that you just answered, but you brought up a good point that I'd like to speak to as well. Is in my own life, I know that when the practice of tithing just became norm, we're moving to that abnormal place where God is calling us to, and as a culture, that is abnormal.
Yeah.
But in my own life, when that became a normal thing for me, that's when I began to notice the margin to do above and beyond that.
Oh, yeah.
So just a little point out there, that if you don't find yourself in a position to do it today, trust God and see what He might do.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's when it came.
And that's a really good point too, because I think that once we get our finances under control and we get to reality and know what actually is going out, what's coming in, what's going out, and we're controlling that, and we're not just spending, money at Starbucks or on whatever we want to do, but we're actually watching those dollars and we're saying, hey, there's actually a lot more here to work with than I thought there was. And so that's when it gets exciting, because you realize I'm not as strapped as what I've been thinking.
Right.
I have quite a bit of margin here, and I want to be able to use that and be generous with
Give it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think this is the last question, and it is simply, how can we get the family involved in giving and in tithing?
Yeah, this is a great question. Tithing is definitely something we want to introduce to our children. We want them to understand that God is faithful in these areas, and that we're training them up to understand that God is involved in every area of your life. And I certainly want my children to be blessed and understand God's favor on their finances as they're growing up. I don't want that to be new news when they turn 18 or 21 and move out. And so that they understand this practice and they get to see how God works And so one of the things I would just say is that if this is a practice in your family that you already tithe, to just make sure that you point back to your children about what God's doing. When God provides and is so good to you, that you're showing them how that's happening in your life. Look for how God is doing it and making things last, whether it's a car, or fridges, or other things that people are having to buy every couple of years, but yours just seem to keep working and working well. Anyway, but that's something you could do. Another thing is, if this is a brand new thing for your family, bring your kids in and let's write that check together and to say as a family, listen, we are choosing to trust God with our finances. We want you to be involved in it. We want you to know this is what we're doing as a mom or a dad, and that as we write this, we're expecting God to do good things in our family. We're going to start looking for those things. It creates faith in your children. It creates faith in you. It's great accountability for the whole family, and it gives God room to show himself in some miraculous ways, and then you get to experience that as a family. And I think that would be a great way to be able to involve the family. And then talking to your children about tithing and working that out in their own finances as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think these questions and answers are going to help people just take a little further thought to what the message was this last Sunday and how to put it into practical use.
Yeah. Hope this has been helpful. See you guys later.